Hello and welcome to StudyIQ, India's largest educational channel. My name is Dr. Mahipal Singh Rathod, and in this lecture I will be discussing the Iraq wars with you. There are three different wars that we will discuss: the Iran-Iraq War of 1980 to 88, the Gulf War or the first Gulf War from 90 to 91, and the US invasion of Iraq or the Iraq War 2003 to 11. I have got many requests over the past months to make individual videos on all these three, but I have decided to make a combined video, although this will make it more than 1 hour long. But if you watch these wars together, you will be able to understand the history and the politics of Iraq and the current crisis, the civil war that is going on right now with regards to ISIS, Islamic State. You will understand it better because all these three wars are related and the current crisis is also related to these. The common factor for all these three wars was Saddam Hussein, the brutal dictator of Iraq. Before going into the details, let me tell you that StudyIQ has launched its UPSC pendrive course using which you can study for IAS, IPS examinations from your home, or if you're a working professional, you do not need to leave your job or migrate to a metropolitan city, you can now study on the go. Our courses are also available for SSC CGL exams which are coming soon and the bank examinations. To know more about these courses, you can visit our website studyiq.com and you can call on these numbers also. The history of Iraq begins with the history of Ottoman Empire in the medieval ages. I cannot go beyond that, although it begins from the ancient civilizations of Sumer and Mesopotamia, but we have to keep it short. So Ottoman Empire was a large empire. All this pink and red colored area that you see, that was part of Ottoman Empire, one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. But by the time of 19th century, the Ottomans were becoming weak. This was their core area. Okay, they started from here in Anatolia and the capital was Istanbul. But by the 19th century, the empire had become too big. It was becoming weak. So all these territories were lost to colonial powers. You can see here France, Algeria, Tunisia, Italy, Libya, Egypt was gone to Britain. So all these territories were lost. The Balkan nations declared their independence like Greece, Romania, Bulgaria. But still it had a large area. The entire nation of Turkey today, Syria, Iraq, Jordan. Then you can see the holy shrines of Makkah and Medina were also under their control. So still at the end of 19th century, you can say when World War I started, even at that time, Ottoman Empire was quite powerful. It had control over the important trade routes connecting the east to the west. When World War I began in 1914, the Ottomans sided with Germany and they fought against England and France. Ultimately, they lost. Another development that happened in this region was that the Arabs living in this area, Syria, Iraq and this region, they did not want the Turks to rule over them. So Ottomans were Turk. They were the Turks ruling over this area. So they rebelled against their rulers and England helped them. If you know the story of Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence, he was instrumental in this rebellion. He helped the Arabs revolt against the Turks. So this area wanted independence. These regions wanted independence. And after the Ottomans were defeated, the British carved away entire Ottoman Empire and they gave these regions to the Arabs who had helped them during the World War I. So this was the division that was done. This is the Sykes-Picot line, the Sykes-Picot agreement, the famous 1916 agreement, according to which the division was made. So Syria kept Lebanon and French kept Lebanon and Syria and also some territory here in Turkey which is not marked in this map. And England decided to keep Iraq, Transjordan and Palestine. They were carved away into three different territories. So this was a British mandate. Palestine was kept under the British rule. Transjordan was given away to an Arab dynasty and Iraq was also given away to the Hashemite dynasty. So that is why it is also called as the Hashemite rule of Iraq or Hashemite Iraq sometimes. This was according to the League of Nations. So they did all this under the League of Nations mandate. And the ruler who was put up on the throne was King Faisal. Although this was a Hashemite rule, but for all practical purposes, Iraq was a British territory. It was a British dominion because they wanted the oil of Iraq. Iraq was one of the largest oil producers and British depended on the oils of this region. In 1932, Iraq was given independence, but this independence was just in the name because all the oil resources were kept with the British. The companies like British Petroleum were operating in Iran and Iraq at that time. They had control over all the oil fields. Only the rule, the normal day-to-day activity administrative rule was given away to the Hashemite ruler, King Faisal. So this is Jordan, Iraq, Syria. This is how the entire area was carved away. So this area is, this division, this boundary is not geographic, this is not natural, this is artificial. All these boundaries are artificial, they were made by the British. That is the most important fact that you have to remember. All these Middle East borders are mostly artificial. They were shaped by the geopolitics of the 20th century and not by geography. What do I mean by geography? See, this is a map of France. If you see on the west side, on the south and the west, we have the Alps. Then on the south, we have the Pyrenees separating from Spain. This separates it from Italy. And here there's the Bay of Biscay, and here there is the English Channel. So on most of its sides, France has been geographically bordered by large features which prevent any other country from attacking it. So these geographical features also increase the cohesiveness, the national identity, and France has more or less been, the Kingdom of France has more or less been surrounded by these geographical features only. The country of France today also controls this region. It has not gone beyond these. And other countries have not been able to invade it successfully or hold its territory. Similar thing is for Italy. If you see the natural border of Italy is like this, somewhere like this, it follows the Alp mountains. Here it has sea on all the three sides. So Italy also developed nationalism and they developed a national identity. And France does not have a natural geographical barrier over here in the north. So whenever any country wanted to attack them, they chose this region. Best example, Hitler in World War II, the Blitzkrieg campaign. They attacked from the Low Countries. Coming back to our Middle East map, this is the country of Iraq, Syria, Sykes-Picot line here. Then we have Jordan, Israel and Lebanon. This is the area that we are going to talk about mainly. Kuwait is situated here. This is Kuwait and this is Iran. So this is the region that we are going to talk about. I hope you understand the geographic cohesiveness, the concept of geography, why it is important in nation building. Even in India, you can see this example. On the north, we have Himalayas. In the south, we have sea on all the three sides. In the northeast, there are hills that border India between Burma and India. Now we come to the modern day political borders, the political map of Iraq. So Iraq on the north is bordered by Turkey. To the east by Iran, a very long border. Then to the southeast by Kuwait. Then on the south or the southwest, there is Saudi Arabia. And towards the west, there is Syria, the Sykes-Picot line and Jordan. So these are the borders of Iraq. You will see that Iraq has very little sea access, the very small border that it has access to Persian Gulf. This has been a problem historically. Their important city Basra, situated in the south, is a port, but this port is situated on a river. To overcome this problem, earlier they used to take help of either Syria to transport their oil from pipelines towards the Mediterranean, or the help of Kuwait for easier access to ports. But now they have built their own terminals. So they have built an offshore terminal here in the Persian Gulf, where the large tankers, the super tankers, they come and they berth. They are filled up with oil, because small ships can come into this river, but the larger super oil tankers, they cannot move into this river. So that has been a problem for Iraq, and this will be one of the causes for the Iran-Iraq war. I will discuss it later. According to OPEC, Iraq has the fourth largest proven oil reserves in the entire world. Iraq has oil fields both in the north as well as the south regions. The two important rivers of Iraq are Tigris and Euphrates. They originate in Turkey and they flow via Syria. The Euphrates river flows via Syria and into the region of Iraq. These are the rivers along which the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia or Sumer had developed, and even now most of the important cities of Iraq are situated along these rivers, because otherwise a large part of the country is desert, especially this area is entirely desert. So most of the cities are situated along these rivers. Baghdad, the capital, is situated along Tigris river. Mosul, the most important city, second largest city and an important center in the north, it is also along Tigris. Then these are the cities of Erbil and Kirkuk, which are part of Kurdistan. We will discuss Kurdistan in the next slide. Then there are important cities for Shia Islam, that is Karbala and Najaf. Karbala was the site where the Battle of Karbala took place in 680 AD. And Najaf is the place where the tomb of Ali, the fourth Caliph of Islam, the fourth Rashidun Caliph, as well as the first Imam of Shia Islam, he is entombed here in Najaf. And in Karbala is the site of the Battle of Karbala, and also Ali's son Hussein, he was martyred here. His tomb is in Karbala. So these are the holiest sites for Shia Islam after Makkah and Medina. And they get a lot of visitors, a lot of pilgrims. These are the second most visited sites after Makkah, Medina in Islam. So this can be called as the core area of Shia Islam, and there is a huge Shia Islam population here in the south of Iraq. Iraq has different provinces which are called governorates, and one of the autonomous regions is Iraqi Kurdistan. So the dark red colored area that you see here, this is officially an autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan. It is autonomous since 1991 when there was a war and the Kurds got their autonomy. They have their own government, their own parliament, and even their own army, which is called the Peshmerga. These Peshmerga fighters were instrumental against the fight in ISIS. When the Iraqi army simply melted away in 2014 against the ISIS attacks on Mosul, Ramadi, Fallujah, the Peshmerga were the fighters that stopped the ISIS advance. They did not let ISIS enter into Kurdish territory. So these Kurd people, they have autonomy over the dark red area, but during the 2014-15 ISIS civil war, they have captured the territory that you see, the shaded portion. Now they have control over this as well, because the Iraqi government has lost control here. Alright, and they claim this territory. Up till here, they claim that this should be part of Kurdistan, but for now, they have only this dark colored area under their autonomous region. So this is Iraqi Kurdistan. Now, who are these Kurds? Kurds are also Muslim, but they are a different ethnicity. These people are of different ethnicities. Some cultural practices are different, and they are scattered all over Turkey. You see, Turkey has a large Kurdish population, and they have been waging a war against the state of Turkey for a long time. And here in the northern Syria, there are Kurds, then northern Iraq and Iran also. So in all these three countries, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, they have asked for autonomy. They got it successfully in Iraq. They did not get it in Syria, but now they have established some areas during the Syrian civil war here. And in Turkey, there is a big problem going on between the Kurd and the president right now, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Some Kurds want an entire Kurdish homeland in this region. They want a separate country for Kurds comprising all the areas of these four different countries. So you see how a population was divided because of that geopolitical boundary division, because the British did not care about the Kurds. They simply divided the border as and how they wanted. So the Kurds population have been divided in 4 or 5 different countries now. Now we will discuss the religion in Iraq. Iraq is majorly a Shia Islam country. 65% population follows Shia religion. The Shias are concentrated mainly in the southern part of the country. You can see here the holy places of Najaf and Karbala are situated in South Iraq. And the central part around Baghdad, it is a mixed region where there are Shias as well as Sunnis. Sunnis are total 31% of the population, and main Sunni areas are in the north along the Euphrates river here and along the Tigris river. So these are the major Sunni areas. Then there are small populations of the Yazidis and the Christians. They are very less in number, and they were persecuted very badly by the ISIS when it advanced in 2014. So in northern Iraq, you have these old communities of Christianity that follow the most ancient Christian practices. All these were persecuted by ISIS. And this is the area of Kurdistan. As you can see, the autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan. So there are 3 large ethnic groups or large religious groups. One is the Kurdistan, second is the Shias here in the south, and the Sunnis here in the north. This is mostly desert, so it is very sparsely populated. Now you can appreciate the religious ethnic divide of Iraq. Southern region Shia, northern Sunni, central area mixed population of Shia and Sunni, and here in the extreme north there is Kurdistan. And this social ethnic divide has been a cause of a large scale ethnic violence, and in the past 100 years the power has been concentrated in the hands of Sunnis. So most of this time, since 1920, the Ottoman time, the power has been concentrated in the hands of the Sunnis till 2006. So earlier there were the Hashemite rules. There was a coup against them in 1941, but the Hashemite king was restored to power by the British because they wanted a puppet ruler over Iraq who could establish a steady supply of oil during World War II. In 1958, there was another coup. This time the military was involved and the Hashemite dynasty was overthrown forever. In 1968, the Baath party came to power. Sometimes these two coups are called as July revolutions. Both of them happened in July, so they are called as July revolutions. The key feature was that Sunnis were ruling over the Shia majority, and this led to dissatisfaction because of some of the policies of the ruling elite. This Baath party ruled over Iraq from 1968 to 2003. Baath word means resurrection or renaissance in Arab language. The party was founded on the principles of Arab nationalism. It said that all the Arabs should be one, they should become one country to be ruled as one people, and it believed in socialism. So Baath party has a large base in Syria, Iraq as well as Egypt. In Syria and Iraq, they were in power for a long time. If you remember, the Assad family of Syria Bashar al-Assad, Hafiz al-Assad, they were both members of the Baath party. They are the ruling elite over there as well. So Baath party came to power in 68 and the first president was Ahmad Hassan al-Bakr from 68 to 79. His period saw high economic growth because he nationalized the oil companies in early 1970s. So all the revenue that was earlier going to the British companies, now it came in the hands of Iraq government, and that led to prosperity and high economic growth. But due to the wars of Saddam Hussein and the various internal policies like the purges, that led to social and political problems and economic stagnation during the later rule of Baath rule, especially Saddam Hussein's time period. Saddam Hussein was from Tikrit. He was part of al-Bakr's administration as a vice president, and he became president himself at the age of 42 in 1979, ruling till 2003. He was a brutal dictator. During his time period, Iraq took part in multiple wars, the three major wars that we will discuss. There were lots of purges during his time. What do you mean by purge? A purge is where your own officers of the army or senior administration officials, they are discharged from their duties or even sometimes thrown in jail or murdered just because you do not trust them. Stalin was very famous for his purges, and so was Saddam Hussein. Whenever he felt that some military general became too ambitious, too powerful, that he can overthrow me, Saddam Hussein used to throw that army general into jail. He did it many times. During his time period, there were rebellions by the Shias and the Kurds. Why? Because Shias were dissatisfied by his policies, so they tried rebellion. The Kurds also rebelled twice. Once they rebelled during al-Bakr's rule in early 1970s, and after that they had an agreement with the government that they will have their autonomy, but by 74 that agreement was not honored. Again during the Gulf War 1991, again the Kurd rose up in rebellion because they thought America will support us, and after this rebellion finally in 1991 they were given autonomy and the Kurdistan was established. His time was the time period when there was large scale killings of Kurd, that is called genocide, because he killed on the basis of ethnicity. That's it. If you are a Kurd, Saddam Hussein will murder you. That was the policy. That is genocide, when you kill a large number of people just on the basis of their ethnicity and not any other factor. His regime was overthrown by the US-led invasion in 2003. The first war that Saddam Hussein entered was the Iraq-Iran war. He came to power in 79 and just after 1 year he invaded Iraq on 22nd September 1980. This led to the starting of the Iraq-Iran war and it ended in 1988. After more than 8 years of fighting, nothing came out of this. What are the causes of this war? The first was that Saddam wanted regional dominance. Iran had been a regional powerhouse and it is a large country, very powerful. Saddam Hussein wanted to replace it. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos in Iran just after the revolution. Iran had a revolution in 78-79. They were still coming to grips with the new administration, so he decided to take advantage of that. There had been historically border disputes between the rulers of this Iraq region, that is the Ottoman Empire, and the rulers of Persia. The main dispute was over this Khuzestan province. See, Khuzestan has a sizable Arab minority. Arabs are the people living in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, entire Arabian Peninsula. And Persians consider themselves as ethnically different from Arabs. Same is the case with the Turks. The people living in Turkey, they consider themselves as Turks, the Ottoman Turks. So Khuzestan had a sizable Arab minority. It was a border province and Iraq lay claim to this, that this is part of Iraq. This was also given as one of the reasons by Saddam Hussein. Now they had other strategic objectives also. If they captured Khuzestan, they would get a long coastline. They had long wanted access to Persian Gulf properly. They did not have a good seaport here and they wanted this coastline access. So Khuzestan, and the second was the Shat al-Arab waterway. This is related to this Khuzestan only. See, Shat al-Arab is the name of the river that is formed by the joining of Euphrates and Tigris in southern Iraq. This had historically been the boundary between Persia and other Arab countries in the Arab regions earlier, the Ottomans or the Turks. So this is Shat al-Arab. You can see this is coming and this is the boundary here at the edge, at the end of the river. This is the boundary between Iraq and Iran. So Basra city is situated on the banks of this Shat al-Arab, and also important cities of Iran like Khurramshahr and Abadan. So they wanted these cities. Saddam Hussein wanted to capture these cities and also the Khuzestan province so that he could have greater access. Historically, they had some treaty, Iraq and Iran, so that no one will interfere with the ships, oil transports that are going on. Iran also has oil reserves here. Iraq also has reserves. So they transport oil using ships via this river. So they had a treaty, but Saddam Hussein wanted the entire river to himself, and this was a vital transport link, and Iran could not afford to lose it. Next cause was the Iranian Revolution, which happened in 78-79. There was discontent with the Shah's rule, and mostly the students led this Iranian Revolution. They overthrew the Shah and monarchy, and Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini, who came to power, he asked the Shias of Iraq to bring a revolution in Iraq as well. He asked them to overthrow Saddam Hussein. This angered Saddam Hussein. He decided to start a war with Iran. So the Iran-Iraq war started in 1980 when Iraq attacked Iran, and they captured a large amount of territory in the initial phase. All this orange colored area, brown colored area that you see, that was captured by Iraq. This is Iranian territory. And why were they successful? Because there was actually chaos in Iran due to the revolution. Their army were not prepared, and this led to a capture of a large territory. Also, Iraq was now supported by USA. Why? Because the Iranian revolution had been against the policies of the Shah, who was a supporter of USA. And also there was the hostage crisis, the Iranian embassy, Tehran embassy crisis that was going on for 444 days. The embassy staff of USA was kept hostage by the revolutionaries in Tehran, and USA decided to support Iraq. USSR also supported Iraq because historically during Cold War, Iraq was on the side of USSR during the Cold War. And now the Communist Party of Iran had been banned by this new government that had come after the revolution. So both USA and USSR, despite being Cold War enemies, they supported Iraq. They provided them with weapons and other ammunitions. By 1982, Iran gathered a large number of volunteers and they retaliated. Ayatollah Khomeini asked the civilians of Iran, the normal people, that join the army in as much numbers as possible so that we can defend our homeland. And the people paid heed to his call. They joined the army in large numbers and they liberated their own territories. And they also attacked Basra. That is the most important cities. So you can see this grey colored area. These are the small territories that were captured by Iran when it counterattacked in 82. Now Iraq was on the run. Iraqi armies retreated and Saddam Hussein offered Ayatollah Khomeini a ceasefire agreement. He said that let's stop the war, and now we have realized our mistake. If you go back to your area, we will not attack anymore. But Ayatollah Khomeini became overconfident at this time. He said that no, now our armies are in Iraq and we will not stop until Saddam Hussein is overthrown. But Iran armies were also not very successful. The attack on Basra was repelled because the Iraqi forces used chemical weapons here and a large number of artillery weapons were used. This led to huge deaths in Iranian army, and this became a war of attrition where a lot of soldiers died, and this was a stalemate for the next 2 years. From 84 to 86, there was a stalemate on ground. Iran started using human wave attacks. What do you mean by human wave attacks? Using 200, 300 soldiers. They had a lot of soldiers, they had a lot of volunteers, but they did not have ammunitions, weapons to fight. So they used humans as weapon. 300 people, 300 army soldiers started attacking a small post of Iraq, and even if 100 of those were killed, the post was eventually captured. So this is human wave attacks, using humans as cannon fodder. Saddam Hussein's air force started bombing Tehran and other Iranian cities, but despite demoralizing the people of Iran, this started to act as a rallying point. Ayatollah Khomeini told people, they are attacking our cities. Do you want to defend the homeland? Join army. So more people, more young people joined the armies. Iran also aligned itself with the Kurds in the north. There was a strategic alliance because Kurds were also fighting against Saddam Hussein's rule. In 1984, Iraq started bombing Iran's oil tankers. This led to Iran blockading the Straits of Hormuz to retaliate against the bombing of its own oil tankers. This situation carried on for 2 years, and finally in 87, USA and other Western nations, they became angry. They also were worried that the entire world's oil supplies pass through Straits of Hormuz and this will be disrupted. So they sent their own navies to protect their oil transport ships. Have a look at this map. You can see the Persian Gulf here. So the oil supplies of Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, everyone goes from this Strait of Hormuz. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran started blockading this. Then other countries protested. After that, they let the other ships pass, but they stopped all the Iraqi ships. They started blockading Straits of Hormuz. So America and the other Western nations, they got involved in this conflict. They started sending their naval ships in the Persian Gulf so that their own oil supplies could be protected. and they pressurized Iran and Iraq after that. That stopped this war. It is enough. Enough is enough. For 8 years you are fighting. Now the entire world's oil supply is being threatened. These pictures show the bombings of the oil tankers. You can see there was large scale oil spills also due to this. So there was an environmental disaster. Many of these oil ships were sunk. Lastly, during the end of this war, there was the Kurdish genocide. Because of the Kurds siding with Iran, so Saddam Hussein started a campaign against them. It was called the Anfal campaign. He used chemical and biological weapons against the Kurds. So sarin and mustard gas chemical weapons were used, and 1 lakh plus Kurdish civilians died. Over 2,000 Kurdish villages were burnt or destroyed. Kurds even claim that more than 1 lakh. It is 1,82,000. That is what they claim. But most of the sources, neutral sources, say that the number was definitely beyond 1 lakh. So 1 lakh civilians. The population of Iraqi Kurds is hardly 30 lakh. And out of those, more than 1 lakh were killed by Saddam Hussein. Civilians. These are not fighters. These are all civilians. So this has been called as the Kurdish genocide. This was during the end phase of the war. So due to the Kurdish genocide and the bombing of the oil tankers, all the Western nations, United Nations, they put pressure on Iraq and Iran, and finally they agreed to a ceasefire. They were also tired of fighting after 8 years, and there was lack of international sympathy to Iraq after targeting civilians with weapons of mass destruction. So after they started this Kurdish genocide and they attacked the cities of Iran, bombing civilians, USA and USSR also stopped supplying them with weapons. Ultimately, there was a UN brokered ceasefire. A very important fact about this Iran-Iraq war is that it has a lot of similarities with World War I. So World War I, there were tactics like trench warfare. Trenches are dug in the ground where soldiers take their position. Then barbed wires are used so that no one can attack. Then there were human wave attacks. Just like World War I, there were also large-scale machine guns used, bayonet charges, use of chemical weapons, just like World War I, deliberate attack on civilian targets. All these features are common between Iraq War and World War I. The world powers, United States and Soviet Union, also France and most Arab countries supported Iraq, while Iran was largely isolated. Why was Iran isolated? Because after the revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini was telling all the Shias and the Muslims of Arab world that start a revolution in your own country, throw away the monarchies, the dynasties that have been oppressing you, throw away the dictatorships of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, etc. So no one supported them. Only Iraq was supported by all these Arab countries. What was the result of this war? Although Iraq and Iran both claim victory, but actually this is stalemate. Why? What was the objective of Iraq? To capture Shatt al-Arab, Khuzestan. Was it successful? No. What was the objective of Iran? To overthrow Saddam Hussein, bring a revolution in Iran, Iraq, and establish a Shia majority government. Did it happen? No. Both the countries failed in their objectives, so this was ultimately a stalemate. And just because of this stalemate, 1 million soldiers died fighting in this war, and more than 1 million civilians also died. 20 lakh people died for nothing because of a stalemate. The borders were similar. Status quo antebellum was maintained. Antebellum means before war, so status quo as it was before the war. The borders were similar after the war. Iraq and Iran both had failed, but this war was a huge human tragedy. Now we will come to the Gulf War. It is also known as the Persian Gulf War, the First Gulf War, the Kuwait War, or the First Iraq War sometimes. Earlier it was known as the Iraq War, but now the 2003 war is known as the Iraq War. So this is not used anymore. The Gulf War was started in 1990. There are 3 phases of this war. First phase is Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in August 1990. Second is the Operation Desert Shield from August to January, when operations leading to the build-up of the troops and the defense of Saudi Arabia was happening. So all the troops were gathering at one place in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. This is Operation Desert Shield. No fighting took place. During Desert Storm, the actual fighting took place. It was hardly a month, January to February, and this is the actual combat phase, Desert Storm. Most commonly, this Gulf War is remembered by this name, Operation Desert Storm. This is Kuwait, the southeastern neighbor of Iraq. Again, Saddam Hussein brought history in here. He said that Kuwait belongs to Iraq. It is a province of Iraq. It was part of the Basra province during Ottoman times, so we should capture it again. And then there were some problems regarding the money. Kuwait had helped Iraq a lot during the Iraq-Iran war. They had supplied them with money. They had also helped them with the export of oil because there was war going on here in the southern part. So all the oil from Iraq, instead of going via Basra, it was going via Kuwait. It was being exported via Kuwait. So Iraq owed a large debt to Kuwait due to this previous war. Kuwait was itself a very rich oil producing nation. Iraq depended on Kuwait for transporting its oil. But now, after the war, Kuwait was overproducing oil beyond its OPEC quota. Tell me, where is the headquarters of OPEC? Now, OPEC gives a certain quota to all the oil producing countries so that the demand supply is maintained. If one country produces a large amount of oil, then the price will go down, because supply increases, demand goes down, price will decrease. Kuwait was also side drilling into the Iraqi oil fields. What do you mean by side drilling? See, there was an oil field here on the border. It was called the Rumalia oil field. Iraq said that Kuwait is drilling in its area, and then later they are drilling down vertically. They are drilling vertically downwards and then sideways, so that the oil from Iraqi area, from this region, is being extracted in Kuwait, in this border Rumalia oil field. So this was done by Kuwait deliberately, and Iraq was not very happy with it. So Iraq was losing precious oil revenues due to two reasons. First was that they were overproducing. Kuwait was overproducing. This was leading to fall in oil prices. Already Iraq's infrastructure of oil was destroyed in the Iraq-Iran war. They were rebuilding, so they needed all the money from the oil. And second, they were losing the oil from the Rumalia oil field due to side drilling. Because of this, Saddam Hussein said to Kuwait that we will attack you until and unless you give us money. So Kuwait and Iraq had a meeting. It was coordinated by the other neighboring countries, also USA. So in July of 1990, they sat down for talks, and Kuwait agreed that yes, we are side drilling in this Rumalia oil field. We will give you money. We will give you whatever revenue has come out from the Rumalia oil field. Saddam Hussein said that this was $10 billion, 10 US billion dollars. Kuwait said that no, we will pay only 9. Saddam Hussein said no, 10. Kuwait said 9. Saddam Hussein said, okay, leave it. I am going to attack you. And that is exactly what he did. On 2nd and 3rd August, if I'm not wrong, he invaded Iraq. He invaded Kuwait, his southern neighbor, when they refused to pay the $10 billion. They occupied the Kuwait city capital. Within 2 days, the entire country was under Iraqi army. The government, the royal family of Kuwait, and all the ruling elite, they fled to Saudi Arabia, and the entire country collapsed just in 2 days. And after this collapse, the large number of Indians staying in Kuwait were helped by Mr. Khiladi Kumar, because he hatched a heroic rescue plan for all the Indians. It has been showed in the movie Airlift. And for your information, this is all based on a real story. The name of that person was Sunny Matthews. He was a businessman from Kerala living in Kuwait, and he, along with the External Affairs Ministry of India, they helped rescue a lot of Indians from Kuwait back to India. At this juncture, Uncle Sam intervenes. Who is Uncle Sam? Uncle Sam is USA. The president at that time was George H.W. Bush, or George Bush Sr. They started putting sanctions on Iraq via UN. So UN put sanctions on Iraq because they had attacked Kuwait, an independent country. You cannot attack any independent country according to UN rules. Iraqi army was deployed on the border with Saudi Arabia. Now Saudi Arabia was under the fear that we will be attacked by Saddam Hussein next. So this fear of Saudi Arabia led to Operation Desert Shield. See, Saudi Arabia and USA are all-weather friends. They have been good friends since 70 years, and Saudi Arabia will always be helped by USA. Even today, when the Yemen war is going on, America has not given any unfavorable statements. No president has given any unfavorable statements towards Saudi Arabia, despite the large-scale humanitarian crisis in Yemen. They have been good friends since 70 years because of oil, and Saudi Arabia needs the money, USA needs the oil. That is why Saudi Arabia will always be helped in its geopolitical crisis by USA. This we have seen in the Gulf War, best example. USA started to build a coalition of 35 nations under the UN banners, and all the 35 countries were mostly the Western European countries, USA, Canada, Australia, all their good friends. They decided to attack Iraq if Iraq did not take back its army. So USA started amassing its forces along the Saudi-Iraq border, also along the Saudi Arabia-Kuwait border. Iraq was given a deadline by United Nations that if you do not leave Kuwait by January 15, 1991, we will use any kind of necessary force. 15th January came and went. Saddam Hussein did not withdraw his army from Kuwait. Thus, the Operation Desert Storm was started on 17th January 1991. Heavy air bombing of Iraq's military installations, communication systems was done for weeks. For more than a month, all they did was bombing. No ground attack, just aeroplanes which were bombing military installations, communication systems. Why? They wanted to weaken the country and its entire infrastructure. What did Iraq do to retaliate? It launched missiles on Israel and Saudi Arabia as well. Israel and Saudi Arabia. Why Israel? Israel is not involved in this conflict, because if Iraq attacks Israel, Israel will definitely retaliate. They will do something against Iraq. And Saddam Hussein thought that if Israel will attack me, I can gather all the Arab nations with me, because everyone hates Israel. No one wanted to be on the side of Israel. So that is why he strategically attacked Israel. But USA kept Israel quiet for 1 month. They told them, do not retaliate, do not send even one single missile again on Iraq, because if you do, the coalition will break down. All the Arab nations that are supporting us, they will not support us if you attack Iraq. So this plan of Saddam Hussein failed. After 1 month of bombings, in February 1991, a ground attack began, and it was a fast moving attack that defeated the Iraqi army in just 4 days, 100 hours. After 100 hours only, there was a ceasefire signed on 28th February. So this was a very successful war for USA. Their strategy here mainly was that do not attack the Kuwait border. See, this is mainly a desert area, and Iraq's army was concentrated here on the Kuwait-Saudi Arabia border. They had captured Kuwait. What US did was they entered from here, the desert area, and they attacked Basra and the southern cities here, and later on they captured Kuwait. So first they encircled the entire Iraqi army which was caught in Kuwait. They cut off their supply lines, and then they attacked Kuwait and liberated it. For those of you who are interested in the military maneuvers, here is a map showing the various armies of the different coalition countries attacking. See, here they are attacking from Saudi Arabia to Iraq. Then later on they are attacking here Kuwait. The retreating Iraqi army set fire to many oil wells according to the scorched earth policy. They burned around 800 oil wells. They set them to fire, and it took a long time for the US and the Kuwaiti administration to put down these fires and start pumping oil again. They also put dynamite here around the oil wells so that if someone is going to extinguish this fire, they will be blasted away. This is a NASA satellite image that shows smoke coming out of the oil wells. So many oil wells were burned that this smoke could be seen from the space. Why did not the coalition attack Baghdad? Does this question come to your mind? They captured southern areas like Basra, etc., and they signed a ceasefire very quickly within 4 days. Why? Why did not they topple Saddam's government for good? The reason was that by this time, rebellions by Kurds in the north had started, and also Shia soldiers had started rebelling in the southern areas. So they thought that Kurds and Shia soldiers will themselves topple Saddam Hussein. We would not be able to do it, and we should not do it, because otherwise Iraq will become very unstable. So USA just waited and watched. They said to the Kurds that we will supply you with weapons and with money. You just rebel against Saddam Hussein, overthrow him, capture power. They promised this to both the Kurds as well as the Shias of the south. But this did not succeed. This assistance never came. They could never supply the Shias and the Kurds, and Saddam Hussein crushed both the uprisings, and he stayed in power until 2003. The US did one thing to help them. They established a no-fly zone. So according to the ceasefire agreement signed on 28th February 1991, they established a no-fly zone over the Kurdish areas in the north and the Shia areas over the south. So this was the line. So below this line, no Iraqi Air Force plane could fly, and similarly about this line there could be no plane flying. So northern no flying zone and southern no flying zone. What is the benefit? They could not bomb the Kurdish areas. Saddam Hussein could not use bombing campaigns against them. They also put up economic sanctions over Iraq that continued till 2003. So Iraq could not trade with any country. There was a complete trade embargo so that Iraq could not develop its army again by selling oil. No one was ready to buy oil from Iraq by paying them money. So the United Nations started a program called Oil for Food. So they asked other countries that if you are getting oil, do not pay Iraq money. You simply pay them food, medicines, etc. So that there is no humanitarian crisis, because people need medicines. People do need food in Iraq as well. So to avoid any humanitarian crisis, India was also part of this. And this oil for food program became controversial later because there was a large corruption scandal that came out. And can you tell me which was the Indian government minister during UPA 1 who was involved in this oil for food scam, and he had to resign. Let's see how good your political knowledge is. So this was the oil for food program started by United Nations. What was the result of this war? It was a very successful war for USA and its coalition partners. Why? Because their primary objective was to liberate Kuwait and prevent an attack on Saudi Arabia. They succeeded in both. They also crushed the Saddam regime because there were huge infrastructure losses for Iraq, and there was very few losses for coalition partners. Only 200 soldiers were killed during the battle. On the other hand, 20 to 30,000 Iraqi soldiers died during this war, and 3,500 Iraqi civilians also died. But their ultimate aim to depose Saddam Hussein, although this was not a clearly stated objective that we want to depose Saddam Hussein, but they thought that the Kurd and the Shias who were rebelling, they would depose Saddam Hussein, they will remove Saddam Hussein from power. That did not happen, but their primary objectives were achieved. Help Saudi Arabia, liberate Kuwait, and destroy Iraq's infrastructure so that Iraq could not become very powerful again by selling oil. This was the first war that was telecasted live, and CNN was one of the major channels that did this. They had their reporters reporting live when attacks were going on. Behind on the screen you could see missiles and bombs falling down, and CNN reporters were reporting. This is also called as the video game war sometimes because of images like this. You could see night vision cameras. Like today you see the drone footage that there's a bomb going down and suddenly there's a blast on the ground. So such footage, first time it came out during the Gulf War, when army released such footage to the media, and also the channels like CNN, they started reporting on the missile attacks when for 1 month continuously missiles were attacking Baghdad and military installations. They showed such kind of images. This looks like a first person shootout game to you. You are just watching something being destroyed. So this was called a video game war. Now we will discuss the third war, that is the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. At this time the president was George W. Bush, or George Bush Jr. He is the son of the earlier president George H.W. Bush. At the end of the Gulf War in 1991, Saddam Hussein had agreed, according to that ceasefire agreement of February, that he will destroy all the nuclear, chemical and biological weapons stockpile. We had seen that during the Kurdish genocide they had used chemical and biological weapons, and there was also the threat that he might be developing a nuclear program. So he was asked to dismantle all his weapons stockpile, and he agreed at that time. But after 9/11 something changed. After the attacks of September 11, George Bush declared that Saddam Hussein regime was a threat to the entire world. It was part of the new axis of evil. Which were the countries in the axis of evil? North Korea, Iran and Iraq. These countries were directly or indirectly threatening the security of United Nations according to George Bush. So he declared a war on terror. According to this policy, America will fight against any nation, any entity, any non-state actor that is supporting terrorism anywhere in the world if that terrorism is threatening US. So they said that we will attack Afghanistan just because Al-Qaeda is living in Afghanistan. They asked Taliban that give us Al-Qaeda leaders, we will not attack you. But they did not agree, so Afghanistan was attacked. Then they launched many operations in countries like Yemen where there was Al-Qaeda active, and similarly they attacked Iraq. But the cause here was weapons of mass destruction. In November 2002, United Nations passed a resolution that charged Iraq of violation of the sanctions that were put up in 1991, and these charges were very serious. United Nations said that if you are not destroying your chemical weapons, you will face serious consequences. What is a weapon of mass destruction? It is any nuclear, radiological, chemical, biological or any other weapon that can kill and bring significant harm to a large number of humans, or it can cause great damage to human-made or natural structures or the biosphere. That is a weapon of mass destruction. So the nuclear bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were WMDs. Radiological weapons, chemical weapons like sarin gas, which has been used by Assad in Syria. Then biological weapons like anthrax, which is a bacteria. It is a deadly bacteria. So anthrax spores are used as biological weapons. All these are weapons of mass destruction. Iraq was mainly accused of having chemical weapons. They said that Iraq has nuclear or chemical weapons, which are weapons of mass destruction. They can be used against any country in the world. And that is why US, under the action of United Nations, decided to attack Iraq in 2003. And this time they stated that yes, our goal is to remove Saddam Hussein from power. They clearly stated their objective that we want Saddam away from power and we want to destroy the WMDs. This has been one of the greatest lies of 21st centuries, because after Iraq was captured, invaded, after it was defeated, they found no weapons of mass destruction, no active facility where any kind of chemical gases could be manufactured. So this operation started in March 2003. Unlike the first Gulf War, this time there were only 4 countries: US, UK, Australia and Poland. Good friends of America like France, Germany, they were all against this war. There were rallies in USA itself which said that no, we do not want war on Iraq. There were large anti-war rallies all over the world. And France President Jacques Chirac clearly stated to George Bush that you are doing wrong. There are no WMDs. The team that has been sent there by United Nations, it did not find any WMD facility. So why are you attacking? George Bush did not listen to anyone. He got his good friends like UK, Australia and Poland together to attack. So you saw that there were 35 countries in the previous coalition, but now not so many countries. Only 4 countries had attacked. The tactic used by US in this war was shock and awe. Just like the previous Gulf War, when they attacked via military bombardment for 1 month, they did the same thing here. Shock and awe means that bombard the enemy so much that his will to fight is gone. When you are bombarding day and night, 24 hours bombs are dropping on you, you are scared to even venture out. So how will you fight? It came in media parlance, that is why I have used this term here. In 3 weeks, Baghdad and all the major cities were captured by ground forces after this shock and awe campaign. Saddam Hussein was captured in December 2003 near Tikrit, and after a court trial, he was executed in 2006 December. This is a map that shows the advance. The army started from Kuwait. Kuwait was a good friend of US since a long time because they had liberated them earlier. So all the army started from Kuwait. They attacked Basra, but this time they went north because they wanted to remove Baghdad. They wanted to capture Baghdad and remove Saddam Hussein. So they attacked Baghdad and all the major cities. Within 1 month, all the major cities were captured. So 19 March, Iraqi Freedom Operation starts. 20th March, southern Iraq is attacked. 26th March, northern front is opened from here. Kurdistan, the armies of Kurds, they supported the US troops. 5th April, they entered Baghdad, and by 1st of May, George Bush declared that all the major combat operations are over. Iraq has been won. Saddam Hussein was captured on 13 December near Tikrit. This is George Bush celebrating the ending of combat operations in Iraq. Little did he know that this would be the worst war that he could enter. It was not like his father's campaign of just 1 month that they got in and they got out. By deposing Saddam Hussein, he had made the biggest blunder of US policy. We will see the aftermath of US invasion now. The power vacuum that was left by Saddam Hussein was filled by multiple groups, and this led to armed struggle and insurgency against the occupying forces, which led to instability in Iraq. Under such conditions, elections were held in 2005, and like any democracy in the world, whoever is in majority in the population, they will have power. Power came into the hands of the long oppressed Shia majority, and just like the Sunnis before them, they also started oppressing the Sunnis, which led to further violent clashes and ethnic violence that has carried on in Iraq for many years. It is continuing even till today in some form or the other. Iran and Saudi Arabia are the major players in Middle East. They started supporting their own proxy militias. Iran started supporting Shia militias, Saudi Arabia started supporting Sunni militias. They were vying for influence because they thought that there is a power vacuum in Iraq. If we influence the government, if we get our militias to be powerful, we can influence the entire country of Iraq for the foreseeable future. Under such conditions, Al-Qaeda also became active here, and Al-Qaeda started resistance in Iraq on a large scale. There were huge bombings in Baghdad. Every other day there was a bombing in Baghdad which led to killings of 50, 200, 100 people. And this ethnic violence that started in 2004, it went on till 2007. This was the worst phase of ethnic violence in Iraq. All the major politicians, they had their own militias. All the major political parties had their militias. Any person worth his salt in Iraq at that time had a militia. And these militias were fighting on 2 fronts. They were fighting against the US army that was occupying Iraq at that time, and also the Iraq security forces, that is the Iraqi army that was being rebuilt slowly and steadily. And on the other hand, they were also fighting among themselves because there was a sectarian conflict among the various groups. So this was a 2-pronged fight. These were the major centers of this insurgency. You can see all of the cities, all the major cities of Iraq had an insurgency problem, and especially this region near Tikrit, where Saddam Hussein belonged to. He was born in Tikrit. This was also an important center of former regime elements. So people who had been supporter of the Baath party, Saddam Hussein, they were still fighting with the government, the new government. And this is asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric means that there are not 100 people that you can see and that you can kill. Fighting is going on in the city during night time. You don't know who is fighting whom. So it is a very difficult situation to maintain law and order. And this insurgency brought huge instability to Iraq for many, many years. Then Al-Qaeda also came into the picture. Al-Qaeda started operating in the Sunni majority areas, and they said that the Shia majority government is not following good policies. They are oppressing the Sunnis. To some extent, they were correct. Yes, the Shia majority government was bringing policies to oppress the Sunnis, but Al-Qaeda started using extreme violence. They started using bombings against the Shia majority areas. They started bombing in places like Karbala, Najaf, and the Shia majority cities in the south. You can see this is the area where they were mainly active here in the north in 2006. By 2008, due to sustained military action, their area had restricted only to major cities like Mosul. In Baghdad also, Al-Qaeda had quite a lot of influence in many areas. This is one of the pictures when the militias had blown up entire convoy on a highway. You can see the smoke coming out here. They ambushed a convoy and put it to flames. So these are all civilians. What does a militia means? Militia means a private army which is not well trained. So these are people who have taken up guns to support their own cause, their own sectarian causes. So the Shia militias were fighting the Sunni militias and so on. In 2007, United States decided to bring a troop surge. It means they decided to increase the number of soldiers in Iraq by 22 or 23,000 to stop this violence. And this succeeded to some extent because of the increased number of soldiers. The ethnic violence came down a little bit, but they did not succeed completely. By 2011, when Barack Obama decided to withdraw US forces from Iraq completely, there was still violence going on in Iraq, and even after 2011, the violence has not subsided. This is Barack Obama making that historic announcement of the ending of combat operations in December 2011. He said that the soldiers should celebrate Christmas with their own family back in home. In this war, during the initial phase, that is March to May, just the initial 1 or 2 months of the operations, there are only 200 coalition soldiers who died. That this is very small. So just like the Gulf War, the number is small here. But afterwards, during this insurgency phase from 2003 to 11, 5,000 US soldiers have died. Almost 5,000 US soldiers. And 18,000 Iraqi soldiers have also died fighting Iraqi security forces. ISF means Iraq Security Force. During this time, 7,000 civilians died, but during this insurgency, 5 lakh civilians. Some estimates go even as high as 8 lakh. So 5 to 8 lakh civilians have died in this insurgency only till 2011. This is only until 2011. This is not, I'm not even talking about the time period after 2011 till 2017 when I'm making this video. Nouri al-Maliki was the Prime Minister of Iraq from 2006 to 2014. He was a Shia and he centralized power completely and ran the government on Shia sectarian lines. His policies led to the alienation of Sunni population. He brought all the important positions, the ministers, they were all Shia during his government, and he started many policies. For example, he arrested the Sunni vice president, a very powerful Sunni leader by the name of Tariq al-Hashemi in 2011. He was dismissed from his position of vice president because Nouri al-Maliki said that he is supporting a militia that is killing Shia people, and Tariq al-Hashemi's house, army was sent at night time to arrest him. So this angered the Sunni population. There are also some other issues. The Sunnis rose up in protest in 2012 and 13. In many cities of Iraq, there were protests. These were non-violent protests. Remember, these were not violent protests. The common people, the common Sunni people started coming to rallies in large numbers. Nouri al-Maliki suppressed these rallies brutally. He sent army against those rallies and many people were killed when the army went to suppress these rallies. Under such conditions, Sunni became very angry with the government, and many Sunnis thought that there is only a military solution to this problem of Shia dominance, and such conditions paved the way for ISIL's rise in northwestern Iraq in 2013 and 14. ISIL is Islamic State in Iraq and Levant. So this was a breakaway organization of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and this was more extreme. They followed a hardline Islamist ideology, and ISIL captured cities like Fallujah, Ramadi, Mosul in 2014. And this was the beginning of another phase of Iraqi civil war that is still going on. So Nouri al-Maliki was the prime minister at that time. Later he was deposed in 2014. He was removed from power. This is a graph that shows the number of civilian deaths, only civilian deaths, not combatants, since 2011. So we saw that almost 500,000 people died till 2011, and even after that there are thousands and thousands of people that are dying every month. You can see the average number of people dying is approximately 300 to 400. And after 2013, when ISIS became very powerful, in 2014 in June, when they attacked cities like Mosul, you can see the number of people dying every month is more than 1000. And when they attacked Mosul, there were more than 2200 deaths because they executed Shias in large numbers. So this is the history of Iraq from 2011, and this is going on till today, 2017. The ethnic violence has not stopped. All the groups are still fighting. There are a lot of militias, and Iran is supporting some, Saudi Arabia is supporting some, and this group, ISIS, has come to power in such unstable conditions. ISIS, this is a photograph of their attack on Mosul when they marched into Mosul in 2014 June and captured the north and the northwestern provinces of Iraq. You can see this blue colored territory was captured by ISIS. It was under ISIS control in December 2014 when the group was at the height of its power. Important cities like Raqqa, which was made their capital. So Raqqa and areas of Iraq, northwestern. So this is Anbar province and this is Nineveh province. So these are the major areas that were captured by ISIS. And they do not agree to the Sykes-Picot line. They said that Sykes-Picot is an artificial border and we should capture all the territory and make all the Sunni areas in another one Islamic state. That is their philosophy. So you can see the control of the Iraqi government was now limited only till the southern areas, the Shia majority areas and some areas around Baghdad. And here there is Kurdistan in the north. Peshmerga fighters stopped the attack of ISIS further into Kurdistan, but Mosul was still captured. As of now, in 2017, the attack on Mosul is mostly successful. Past 7 months, Iraqi army is fighting in Mosul. They have almost captured Mosul completely, and the Islamic State is on the run now in Iraq at least, but they are still going strong in Syria. I hope you liked this lecture. Kindly give your feedback in the comment section. You can also mention any other topics that you want me to make videos on. Have a good day. Thank you for watching this.